The battle wound. The ground was shaking under the weight of falling ships. The smell of smoke and burning metal filled the air. Human medic Ethan Cole ran through the ruins of the battlefield, his uniform torn and his hands covered in dust and blood. The war between Earth's coalition and the Xynar Empire had turned this planet into a graveyard of steel. Fire and silence. Ethan's squad was gone, wiped out in the first wave of plasma bombardment. Now he was alone, only his small medkit and a half-broken scanner keeping him alive. He had one mission left: find survivors. And he didn't care if they were human or alien. Through the smoke he heard a sound. Not human, it was a soft cry, almost musical. He followed it past the burned husks of drop pods until he found her. Lying among the rubble, an alien woman with skin that shimmered like silver glass and blood that glowed blue under the sunlight. Her armor was cracked and a deep wound cut across her side. Ethan knelt beside her, his breath catching in his throat. He had seen many aliens before, but never one like her. Her face was peaceful even in pain. Her long hair floated like threads of light, and there was something noble in the way she tried to move. Even when she was dying, he activated his scanner. But the screen flashed red. Critical injury detected. Life signs failing. He opened his kit and searched for a nanogel injector, but it was empty, destroyed in the explosion. He looked at her wound again, the blood pulsing like light itself. If he didn't act now, she would die within minutes. "Stay with me," he whispered, even though she might not understand. She turned her head slightly, her eyes opening, glowing silver like starlight. She looked at him with confusion, then fear, and then something softer. "I'm trying to help," Ethan said, his voice shaking. "Please, just hold on." He tore a piece of his uniform and pressed it to her wound, but the fabric melted instantly. Her blood reacted with the human material. He had no tools, no time, only his hands, so he did the unthinkable. He placed his bare hands over the wound, feeling the heat of her energy burning into his skin. He focused his mind, recalling his medical training, applying pressure where needed, blocking the bleeding, whispering words of comfort to a being who didn't even know his language. Then something strange happened. The glow from her wound flowed into his palms, spreading up his arms like liquid light. His heart began to pound faster, matching her heartbeat. His vision blurred, but he didn't stop. "Just stay alive," he murmured. "I'm not letting you die." The energy pulsed again, stronger this time. Her body shivered and the wound began to close. The light twisted and wrapped around his fingers, sealing the torn flesh as if guided by invisible hands. Ethan gasped, his hands burning with energy, but he couldn't pull away. The air around them changed. The sound of the battlefield faded. It felt like they were in a silent bubble of light, time itself slowing down. The alien's breath steadied, her body relaxed, and the blue glow faded into calm silver. When the last pulse of energy passed through him, Ethan fell back, exhausted, his hands trembling, smoke still rising from his palms. The wound on the alien's side was gone, healed completely. Not even a scar remained. He sat there staring, his mind trying to understand what had just happened. No human medicine could do that. Not even the most advanced nanotech on Earth. It was as if his touch had triggered something inside her, something alive. The alien woman opened her eyes again, slowly this time, and looked at him with a strange intensity. "You touched me," she said weakly, her voice like music but filled with disbelief. "I saved your life," Ethan replied, his voice tired. "You were dying." Her hand moved toward his cheek, trembling. "No one can heal a royal like that. Not even our own kind," she whispered. "Only a bonded mate can share that energy." Ethan froze, not understanding. "What?" Her eyes shimmered brighter, tears of light forming. You have bound with me," she said softly, before her strength gave out and she fell unconscious again. Ethan sat there stunned, his heart still racing. He looked down at his hands. The faint glow still dancing across his fingers, the words echoed in his mind. Bonded mate. He didn't know what that meant, but one thing was clear. His act of mercy had just broken every law of her people, and maybe even the laws of the galaxy itself. He looked at the sky, hearing distant thunder and the low hum of alien ships approaching. The war was not over, but his life had just changed forever, and somewhere deep inside that alien queen's heart, the bond they didn't understand had already begun to awaken, the sacred bond when Ethan opened his eyes again. The night sky above the battlefield was filled with red clouds and drifting ash. The alien queen still lay beside him, breathing softly, her wound completely gone. The blue glow from her blood had turned faint and steady, like a heartbeat made of light. He stood up slowly, his legs weak. every muscle in his body trembling from exhaustion. He looked at his hands, the faint silver mark still glowing on his skin. He had never seen anything like it before. Not in any human science, not in any medical training. It was as if his body had absorbed a piece of her life. A deep humming sound filled the air. Bright lights flashed through the smoke. Ships were descending. Sleek and black with strange runes carved into their metal, the Zynar rescue force had arrived. Ethan raised his hands, but before he could move, armored aliens surrounded him, weapons drawn. "Step away from the Queen," one of them shouted. Their language translated through Ethan's helmet chip. "She's alive," Ethan said quickly, pointing to her. "She needs help." The guards didn't move. They stared at him with something between fear and hatred. When one of them checked the Queen's pulse, he froze. "Her life force is stable," the soldier whispered. "But how?" The Queen stirred, her eyes opening again, faint light glowing behind her pupils. When she saw Ethan, her expression softened. She reached for him weakly. "He saved me," she said, her voice barely audible. The guards exchanged looks of shock. One of them dropped to his knees. "That cannot be. No outsider can heal the royal blood," another soldier whispered, "unless—" then stopped himself, staring at Ethan as if seeing something impossible. Two massive figures in ceremonial armor approached from the ship, their presence heavy and commanding. One knelt before the Queen, the other pointed at Ethan. "Human," he said coldly, "what did you do to her?" I stopped the bleeding," Ethan stammered. "I used my hands, I didn't have tools. I just tried to save her." The alien leader's eyes widened. Then he turned to the Queen. "My Queen, do you feel the bond?" The Queen nodded slowly, her hand still resting over her chest. "Yes," she whispered. "It's real. His energy flows through mine." The guards all bowed in silence, even the leader lowered his head. Ethan looked around confused. "Wait, what's going on? What bond?" One of the guards looked at him as if he was sacred and cursed at the same time. "Only a chosen mate can heal the Queen through touch," he said. "It is an ancient law of our kind, a soul link." "Bound for life," Ethan stepped back. That's not possible. I'm human." The leader nodded grimly. "Then the impossible has happened." Before he could say more, the Queen collapsed again, her strength fading. The guards rushed to lift her gently, carrying her toward the ship. One of them grabbed Ethan's arm. "You come too, human." The bond must be tested. Inside the ship, everything glowed with blue energy, symbols floating in the air. The technology felt alive. The Queen was placed in a healing chamber, while Ethan was forced into a chair opposite her. A strange device connected to both of them. A humming sound filled the room as the machine activated, beams of light scanning their bodies. Ethan winced as a wave of warmth passed through his chest. He saw flashes. Her memories, her pain, the moment of the wound, and then his face, his hands glowing as he saved her. The machine's core turned white-hot, then cooled. A voice spoke in the Zynar language. Bond confirmed. Everyone in the room gasped. The alien leader stepped back in disbelief. "He carries her life signal," he said. "The human is her chosen mate," Ethan shook his head. "No, this is a mistake. I'm not—" The Queen opened her eyes again, looking straight at him. "Ethan Cole," she whispered, her voice calm but filled with emotion. "You saved me. You share my essence now. Our hearts are linked." Ethan's throat went dry. He didn't understand half of what she meant, but he could feel something inside him. A rhythm that wasn't his own heartbeat. It was hers. The guards all knelt before them. "Long live the Queen and her chosen," they said in one voice. Ethan stood there frozen, feeling every eye on him. He had gone from a lost medic to the most dangerous being in the galaxy in a single moment. As the ship lifted off from the battlefield, he looked through the window. Watching the burning world below, he whispered softly, "I only wanted to save her." The Queen turned her head weakly, her voice like soft thunder. "And you did, but saving me has bound you to a destiny far greater than your world." The ship ascended into the night sky, disappearing into the stars. Ethan didn't know where they were taking him, but one thing was certain. This was no longer just about survival. It was about a bond that defied every law of science and nature. A bond that could unite two worlds or destroy them both. Trial of the Healer. The Zynar flagship soared through the dark void of space, its hull glowing faintly with cosmic light. Ethan sat in silence inside a silver chamber, his reflection trembling on the metal walls. His heart was still beating strangely, echoing another rhythm, one that wasn't his. Every few seconds he felt a pulse of warmth in his chest. Like a second heartbeat, the Queen's heartbeat. He looked at his hands again. The faint silver glow still visible under his skin. No matter how hard he rubbed, it never faded. The alien guards had barely spoken to him since their arrival. They treated him with a strange mix of respect and fear. One wrong move and they would have vaporized him. But at the same time, they bowed when they passed him, whispering words he couldn't understand. When the ship finally entered orbit over a massive planet, Ethan saw the Xenar capital for the first time. It was unlike anything he could imagine. Floating crystal towers reaching beyond the clouds, bridges made of energy, waterfalls of light flowing through the air. The beauty of it almost made him forget the fear in his heart. He was escorted to the Grand Palace, a place built from pure energy and stone. The walls seemed alive, glowing softly as if breathing. Alien symbols danced in the air, forming patterns that changed with emotion. At the end of the long hall stood the Queen, dressed in ceremonial armor of white and blue, her silver hair cascading down like light, her eyes calm yet full of storm. When Ethan entered, the guards knelt. She did not. Instead, she said, "Bring the human forward." Ethan stepped closer. Unsure what to say, she looked at him quietly, then turned to her council, a circle of high priests, generals and elders, each one radiating power and age. "The bond has been confirmed," said one of the priests, his voice deep and cold. "But it must be tested by the trial of the heart, as our laws demand." Ethan frowned. "Trial of the heart? What's that supposed to mean?" The Queen turned her gaze to him, her expression soft but serious. "It is our ancient way if our connection is real. If your healing was born from truth, we will both live. If not, the bond will collapse, and we will die." Ethan's blood ran cold. "You mean, both of us?" "Yes," she said simply. "Both." The guards surrounded them and led them to a chamber filled with a glowing pool. Symbols floated above it like stars, energy rippling across the surface. Ethan's body trembled as he stepped closer. The warmth of the pool felt alive. The Queen stood across from him, her eyes locked on his. "Do not be afraid," she whispered. "Just breathe." When they stepped into the water, the surface turned into light. Energy wrapped around them like threads. The priests began to chant, their voices deep. Echoing through the chamber, the air grew heavy. Ethan felt pressure in his chest, then visions began to flash before his eyes. He saw Earth, his childhood, the war, the friends he lost, then suddenly he saw her memories. The palace, her coronation, the endless battles and the loneliness behind her crown. He gasped, realizing he was feeling her pain. The Queen trembled too, her breath shallow. She could see his heart, his kindness, his loss, the compassion that drove him to save even an enemy. Their minds collided like waves of light and fire. The chamber filled with blinding energy. The priests stopped chanting. The light rose higher until it exploded in a silent burst. When the brightness faded, Ethan was on his knees, gasping. The Queen lay a few feet away, her eyes closed. "No," Ethan whispered, crawling toward her. "No, no, don't do this to me." He touched her hand, and suddenly her fingers twitched. Her eyes opened, glowing silver again. The marks on Ethan's skin flared brighter than ever. The high priest stepped back, his voice shaking. "The bond is true," he said. "The link of soul and heart is real." The guards dropped to their knees instantly. Even the council bowed their heads. Ethan looked around, still panting. What just happened?" The Queen stood slowly, her strength returning. She looked at him and smiled softly. "You passed the trial, Ethan Cole. Your spirit is pure." He blinked, sweat dripping from his forehead. "I didn't do anything, I just didn't want to lose you." Her eyes softened. "And that is what saved us." But not everyone in the hall looked pleased. One of the generals, a tall figure with crimson armor and golden eyes, glared at Ethan with hatred. "He is human," the general said sharply. "He cannot be our chosen. He is a threat to our throne." The Queen turned her gaze to him, her tone sharp and regal. "Enough, General Vorn. You will not question the bond again." The general bowed, but his eyes burned with fury. Ethan could feel his gaze even as they left the chamber. He knew this wasn't over later. As the Queen rested in her private chamber, Ethan sat nearby, his hands still glowing faintly. She spoke softly. "Our worlds will not understand this, Ethan, to them. We are a danger." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then we'll make them see we're not." She smiled, faintly but sincerely. "You speak like a king without knowing it." He chuckled quietly. "I'm no king, I'm just a medic who got lost." Her expression softened. Maybe the stars wanted you to get lost so you could find me. Outside, thunder rolled through the alien skies, and in the shadows of the palace, General Vorn whispered to his soldiers, "If the Queen will not release the human, then we will remove him ourselves." The bond between Ethan and Lysera had survived the trial, but the danger around them had only begun to grow. The betrayal. The palace of Xenar glowed under the twin moons, its towers reflecting silver light over the great city. But peace was only an illusion. Deep inside those shining walls, whispers of rebellion were spreading. Guards who once bowed now murmured in fear. The word human was on every tongue. Some spoke it with awe, others with hatred. Ethan tried to stay calm. He spent his days in the Queen's private chamber. Helping her recover, her strength was returning fast, and every time she smiled at him, the bond between them grew stronger. He could feel her thoughts sometimes, emotions flowing like waves through his chest. Happiness, worry, pain. They were no longer strangers. They were connected by something deeper than logic. But outside that peaceful room, tension grew. The High Council met in secret, their discussions dark. The prophecy said the chosen would come from the stars, one elder said. But not from that world, not a death worlder, another hissed. If this human truly holds her heart, then he holds the throne. General Vorn stood before them, his eyes like molten fire. The Queen is blinded by emotion, he said. She believes this human saved her by fate. But I believe he enslaved her with trickery if we let him live. Our empire will fall. The council murmured in agreement, and Vorn's lips curved into a cruel smile. Then we agree, he said softly. The human must die. Meanwhile, in her chamber, Lysera stood by the window, the wind flowing through her silver hair. Ethan walked beside her, his tone quiet. You've been distant, he said. Are you all right? She nodded faintly. It's not you, Ethan, it's them. My people fear what they don't understand. They think you are a curse, not a savior. He looked down. Maybe they're right. I didn't mean for any of this. She turned to face him, placing her hand on his chest, the glow of their bond flickering between them. No, Ethan, you gave me life, and in return, I will give you mine, she said, her voice trembling but strong. Before he could answer, the door burst open. Guards rushed in. My queen, the council requests your presence in the Hall of Unity, one announced. She nodded calmly. Very well, she said, then glanced at Ethan. Stay close to me. The hall was filled with hundreds of Xenar nobles. The energy of the room was cold, the air tense. General Vorn stood at the center, his armor gleaming under the light. My queen, he said with a false smile, we gathered to celebrate your recovery and to test the strength of your bond once more. Ethan felt something was wrong. The guards formed a circle around them, their weapons humming softly. Vorn raised his hand, and a device floated between them, a silver orb pulsing with dark energy. This relic, he said, reveals the truth of one's soul. If the bond is pure, it will shine. If not, it will destroy the impostor. The queen's eyes narrowed. You dare test the will of the bond again? For the safety of the Empire, Vorn said smoothly. Surely you have nothing to fear. Ethan stepped forward. I'll do it, he said, his voice steady. If it proves to them that I'm not your enemy. The queen looked at him with worry. Ethan. But it was too late. Vorn activated the orb, a blinding light erupted. Energy chains shot out and wrapped around Ethan's arms. The pain was instant. It felt like fire crawling under his skin. He fell to his knees, gasping. The orb turned red. Glowing brighter, Vorn smirked. Behold, he said. The false chosen, the queen screamed. Stop this! But the guards held her back. Ethan's heart pounded wildly. The bond pulsed between them, his energy clashing with the orb's power. And then, it happened. The mark on his chest flared gold. A beam of light exploded from him, shattering the orb into dust. The energy wave rushed through the hall, knocking soldiers to the ground. Vorn stumbled back in shock. Ethan rose slowly, the golden aura surrounding him. His voice low but thunderous. I didn't come here to rule. I came here to save. The queen broke free and ran to him. Her hands glowing, she touched his shoulders, and their lights merged into one. The hall filled with a blinding glow. The symbols on the walls began to move, ancient words burning in the air. The elders gasped. It's the prophecy, one whispered. The starbound union. When the light faded, Vorn was on the ground, his armor cracked. His face twisted in fury. You've cursed us all, he spat before guards seized him. Ethan turned to the Queen, exhausted. "I think I broke your ceremony," he said weakly. She smiled, tears shining in her eyes. "No, Ethan, you saved it." But even as peace filled the hall for that moment, shadows moved in the corners. Vorn's loyal soldiers slipped away through secret passages, whispering, "Phase 2 begins." Later that night, Ethan and Lysera stood together on the balcony, stars glittering above them. "They'll come for us again," he said quietly. She nodded, "Yes, but next time, they won't find a medic." She looked at him, her silver eyes fierce. "They'll find a warrior bound to a queen." Ethan smiled faintly, the golden light still flickering on his skin. "Then let them come," he said, "because I'm done running." Far beyond the palace walls, in the dark space between stars, an army began to move. Fleets of crimson ships preparing for war, their commander's voice echoing coldly, "If the queen won't surrender the human, then we'll burn Earth first." The bond that healed a wound had now become the spark of a galactic fire, and the universe itself was about to change. The human and the queen. The stars burned brighter that night. Fleets moved like storms across the void. The Zynar Empire had divided in two, those loyal to the queen, and those who followed General Vorn's rebellion. Ethan stood beside Lysera in the Grand Command Hall, the blue light from the star map reflecting across his face. Lines of ships filled the holographic sky, and the silence between them felt heavy. "Vorn's fleet is approaching the Terran system," one officer reported, his voice trembling. "He means to strike Earth before sunrise." Ethan's jaw tightened. He could almost hear the cries of his people, the faces of the soldiers he lost flashing through his memory. "He's using me to start a war," he said, his tone low. "If Earth fights back, millions will die." Lysera turned toward him, her silver armor glinting in the light. "Then we stop him before he reaches your world," she said firmly. "This bond was not given to destroy, Ethan. It was given to protect." She placed her hand over his heart, the warmth of the bond pulsing between them. "Together we end this." Moments later, the Queen's flagship, the Seraphis, broke from orbit, its engines roaring like thunder. Human and Zynar soldiers stood side by side on its decks, uncertain but united. Ethan looked at them and spoke through the intercom, his voice steady and strong. "I'm not your king, and I'm not your enemy," he said. "But I am someone who believes we can be more than what we were made for. I healed your queen with my hands, not with power, but with mercy. And that mercy is what will save us now." The crew bowed their heads, and the ship launched toward the crimson swarm. Hours later, the void turned red. Enemy ships appeared like a sea of fire. Vorn's flagship stood at the center, vast as a city, its cannons glowing with energy. "Human," his voice echoed through the comms, cold and cruel. "You brought weakness to our queen. You brought corruption to our blood, and for that, I will burn your world clean." Ethan glanced at Lysera, who stared back at the glowing image of her former general. "You were once a guardian," she said softly. "Now you are just a shadow. Then shadows will consume your light," Vorn hissed, and the battle began. The sky ignited. Beams of energy crossed space, shields flared. Explosions lit the dark like dying stars. The Queen's ship shook under the impact. Alarm screamed. Ethan rushed to the control station, helping the crew stabilize the core. "We can't hold this forever," an officer shouted. "Their power is overwhelming." Lysera closed her eyes, focusing her bond with Ethan. "There is one way," she whispered. "But it requires both of us," Ethan understood instantly. The connection between them pulsed, their hearts beating in perfect rhythm. "Do it," he said without hesitation. She reached for his hands, their energy merging. Light spread across the command deck, flowing into the ship itself. The Seraphis glowed like a rising sun, its hull surrounded by a halo of gold and silver energy. The ship moved faster than any engine could allow, slicing through the enemy ranks, the energy of their bond fueling every weapon, every shield, every heartbeat. Vorn's fleet faltered under the brilliance, his soldiers blinded, his voice shaking for the first time. "What is this? Power?" Lysera's voice filled the air, amplified across every frequency. "This is what you feared." Vorn, not weakness, not control, but unity. Ethan activated the final defense matrix, sending a pulse through the entire fleet, disabling enemy systems without destroying their ships. The battlefield fell silent, engines dimming, weapons frozen. Only the Queen's voice remained echoing through the stars. "The age of hatred ends tonight," she declared. "Let the galaxy remember that compassion can do what war never could." Vorn screamed in rage, His flagship turned its weapons toward them. Ready to fire one last strike, Ethan felt the bond burn hotter. "He's going to fire, Lysara," he said. "We need to finish this." She nodded, her hand gripping his tightly. Then together, their energy surged one final time. A beam of golden-silver light erupted from their ship, cutting through Vorn's flagship like dawn tearing apart night. Silence followed. Then the crimson vessel broke apart, its fragments scattering into starlight. The battle was over. When the smoke cleared, cheers filled the comms. Human and alien voices mixing together for the first time. Ethan sank to his knees, exhausted. The glow around his hands fading slowly. The Queen knelt beside him, smiling softly. "You did it," she said. "You saved both our worlds." He looked at her with a tired smile. "No," he whispered, "we did, weeks later." A grand ceremony was held in the capital of Zynar. Banners of both Earth and Zynar hung side by side. The Queen stood before millions, and beside her stood the human who changed everything. "Let this day mark the dawn of unity," she proclaimed. "Let it remind us that hearts, not weapons, shape the stars." The crowd roared in celebration. Chanting Ethan's name, some called him the Healer King. Others called him the Star-Bonded. But to him, he was still just Ethan, the medic who refused to let someone die. As the night ended, Lysara and Ethan stood alone on the palace balcony, looking at the stars that now belonged to both of them. "Do you ever wonder why it was you?" she asked quietly. Ethan smiled faintly. "Maybe because I didn't see a queen or an alien that day," he said softly. "I just saw someone who needed help." She turned to him, her eyes glimmering like the cosmos. "And that," she whispered, "is why the stars chose you." They stood together in the glow of two worlds reborn, their bond eternal, their story written in the light between galaxies.